My brother, 24M, turned what should have been a fun wedding night into the worst experience of my life. About 3 years ago, we got invited to a mutual friend's wedding. I, 27M, was excited for several reasons, one of which being I don't get to see my brother, let's call him Jake, often since I work out of state, so it was a great chance to catch up. My fiancé couldn't make it, since she was finishing her studies several states over. At the reception, my brother caught the attention of one of the bridesmaids, we'll call her Sally, who would not leave him alone. Any conversation that he was a part of, she would jump. They seemed to hit it off pretty good, and I was about to chalk the entire wedding up as the best ones I'd been to, until the very end. As I'm getting into my car, Jake comes running up and asks me to go downtown with him and Sally. I thanked him for the invite, but as I was very tired, I told him that I was just going to drive back to our parents. He urged me to come, however, as Sally wanted to hang out with him, but she wouldn't leave her friend, we'll call her Jess, alone, and that friend didn't want to be a third wheel. I declined again and said that driving an hour into town just to get drunk was not what I felt like doing. After I said that, he turns around and yells to everyone in the parking lot that I'm drunk and trying to drive home. This prompted everyone and their mother to run over towards me, and they all started berating me for being irresponsible. I tried to explain to them that I was sober, which causes Sally to yell out that she had seen me drink more than 10 drinks. In reality, I only had 3 during the whole night, and it was a 5-hour wedding. Everyone chose to believe my brother and Sally, and at some point the mother of the bride joined in and told me that if I got into my car, she would call the cops. My brother took my keys and tossed them to Sally, who went with her friend to get their car. At this point, I'm quite agitated already, but my brother assures me that he's got it all figured out. Being left with no choice, my brother said to me that I would join them to hang out at downtown for an hour, after which we could take an Uber with him back his place. My brother would then rendezvous with Sally and take me back to my car in the morning. To be completely honest, I hated this plan. On top of being exhausted, I also felt uncomfortable, as the whole situation was looking from ideal for a guy who's engaged. I texted my fiancé to see if she was awake so I could keep her in the loop and ease my own growing anxiety. She had already gone to sleep, however, as she was 2 time zones over. Now, to make sure I would avoid any miscommunication about what this night would entail, I introduced myself to Jess, specifically saying that I was happily engaged. She just laughed and thanked me for coming, so she wouldn't be a third wheel. So we left, and an hour is a long time to spend in a car with strangers, so I tried to get to know them a bit better. They were pretty much open books, told me about their plans for the future, their past, and their families. Now, I did notice that Jake got quieter as the drive continued, but I figured he was just finally getting tired as well. When we finally arrived, Jake and Sally went to get drinks, so Jess and I hung out near the door. About 30 minutes later, we suddenly get approached by one of my fiancé's friends, we'll call her Lily, and she cuts between Jess and I. She starts asking who I am with, and gives me an attitude that she does not trust me to be acting correctly. To this, I try to explain the situation, but she cuts me off, tells Jess I am engaged, and leaves. This was the point for me that I was ready to call it. I had already thought the whole thing looked bad optically, and after that conversation, it was pretty much affirmed. I went to look for my brother, and I run into Sally making out with some other dude at the bar. Not being bothered, I grab her attention and ask where my brother is, and she informs me that he actually ditched her and left. She had no idea why, as he didn't say anything to her, but just walked out about 20 minutes ago. Confused, I tried to call him, but got sent straight to voicemail. Now there is an issue. I don't know his address, none of my friends are answering, it's past midnight and everyone's asleep. And Jess is freaking out because she doesn't know where Sally went. Luckily, after 15 minutes, we find Sally again, and she proposes that we leave. Me, having no other option really, decided that it is probably for the best and join them. Not long after we start driving, Sally passes out, drunk as hell, which prompts Jess to ask me to help care of Sally and offers me a couch to spend the night on. Really, I curse my brother under my breath, but I agree to stay at their place so that hopefully I could at least sleep. I got to the point of exhaustion where being awake almost felt like torture, as I'm an old man at heart, and making it to the end of the wedding was an achievement in itself for me. Now, you would think things would get better from here, but they don't. When we got to the house, they knock and their old roommate answers the door and tells them to fuck off. Apparently, they don't actually live there anymore, as they had graduated a month prior and were no longer on the lease. They just assumed they could stay at the house after the wedding. So that left us with a shut door, locked, and it's near 3 a.m. Jess started to panic, no idea what to do, while Sally is just being drunk slinging slurs at their roommate through the windows. At this point, I basically begged Jess to drive me home, but she didn't want to, as it would be quite a long drive. I told her that we basically had no other option at this point, and after some convincing, she finally agreed. I took the 2 girls with me in the car, and after the longest drive of my life, we finally got to my parents' house. We get inside, and I show them to my brother's old room, and I go to mine. At that moment, I get a text from my father. He had taken my mother on a vacation that weekend, but got alerted by his camera app that a car pulled in and had seen me getting out with 2 girls. He said that, if I would do something stupid, he wouldn't cover for me. I immediately tried to call him to explain the situation, but he didn't answer anymore. So yeah, I was finally home, but slept like complete shit, because I didn't like the idea of my dad thinking I was cheating, 4 months off from being married. The next day, I was finally able to contact my fiancé, and I got the opportunity to explain the whole situation. She ended up thinking it was actually fairly entertaining, and appreciated the constant texts I was sending her throughout the night. So at least it didn't end up on a bad note, but the night was still one of the worst experiences of my life. With regards to my brother, he apologized to me the next day when I confronted him. Essentially, it boiled down to the conversation I had with the girls in the car, as he just wanted to hook up, but when Sally started opening up about her life, it ruined the night for him. He got cold feet and called up an old fling with which he spent the night. Needless to say, I will never trust my brother again in these kinds of situations. Now for the second story. My first experience with the family of my fiancé led me to break up with him. I know people will likely say that I am crazy, but my gut feeling is nearly always right. So, a few days ago, I met my fiancé's family for the first time, and there were some things about them that just didn't sit right with me. His mom is very possessive about him, as the first thing she said when she saw me was, "So you are the lady that keeps my son busy." I know it could sound like a joke, but she said it in a very condescending tone. Throughout the entire gathering, she was actively trying to avoid me, and would get irritated whenever I got closer to my fiancé. She even made some very mean comments. For example, when I asked her for a piece of pie she had made, she said I would not be able to fit in my dress if I ate any more of it. She deliberately made me sit far away from him, so that she could sit beside him, and I just instantly had the feeling that she didn't like me. Now one of his sisters, Jen, also clearly didn't like me, because she made some snide remarks about my upbringing. I grew up in an abusive household, and I had to struggle a lot, whereas my fiancé came from a well-off family. With regards to his dad, he didn't speak much. He didn't say anything, and just nodded from time to time. The only normal person there was his second sister, Mia, because she just kept to herself. I even had the feeling that she got bullied by the mother as well. Now, let's just say that I did not feel very welcomed by them. This visit really shocked me, and gave me a gut feeling that if I would get married to my fiancé, they would act like this from the rest of my life. I have the feeling that I would always have to be in competition with his mother. It just makes me really sad because my fiancé is so nice and sweet. I never felt so in love with anyone like I did with him. He brings me flowers, he takes care of me, he treats me like a queen. But his family is just really off-putting. For now, I have decided to call off our marriage for now. He was understandably sad and asked for a reason. I just told him that I didn't feel good about our relationship and no longer felt we were compatible. There were tears at both sides, but I left and am now staying over in my aunt's house. One moment, I felt like calling him and telling him that I made a mistake. We were perfect together, did financially well, have similar hobbies, and we were sexually compatible. But his family just really bugs me a lot. I am heartbroken and do not know what to do. Update 1. I reached out to his sister Mia on the phone and was quite surprised that she actually wanted to talk to me. She got the news of us calling off the marriage and asked if she could share some news to me, to which I agreed, as I was desperate to hear anything from him. We talked for like an hour or so, and it was mostly her informing me on how toxic her family was. She told me that I made the right decision because her mom had a weird obsession with her baby boy. She also mentioned that her mother already didn't like me because of the situation in which I grew up, and was just generally a very disrespectful person. A few days after my call, I reached out to my ex-fiancé and finally talked to him. I told him everything that was on my mind and shared the info Mia had given me. Needless to say, he was very upset and tried to convince me that I am making this all up, and it's all in my head. He urged me to now throw away our relationship because of his family, and he was sure that his family would accept me if I became a part of it. I once again tried to explain things from my perspective, but he wasn't budging. I got angry and told I did not want to be a part of his family. Her mother has made degenerating comments to me and treated me like an outsider, which didn't make me feel welcome. I told him that my family had been very toxic, and I really didn't want another one. Maybe someday he will find a woman his mother approves of, but I said to him that that woman is not me. All of this resulted in a big fight where he was defending his family and not willing to listen to what I had to say. Overall, he was very dismissive, and we ended our conversation on a very bad note. I suppose our relationship is completely over now, and I am feeling quite sad about it. Aside from his family, he was an amazing guy, but I'm simply convinced that I will not be able to handle his family. So, yeah, this ended on quite a bad note, but I suppose that is life. I would not be able to handle another toxic family where I would be rejected simply for being who I am. I honestly wish him the best and hope he will one day be able to escape his toxic family.